Hey, welcome to the Home-Based Business Success Podcast. Today's topic, Thoughts Are Things. And good morning. This is Ralph from ralphlindy.com and the Home-Based Business Success Podcast. And a couple days ago, we did a podcast which featured the LibriVox recording of the book, The Science of Being Great by Wallace D. Wattles. And, he was an American New Thought writer and teacher that really laid the groundwork for a lot of the self-help books that would come later. But yeah, he lived from 1860 to 1911 and just really did a lot of impressive work. And in today's podcast, what I thought I would do is to reference one of the works of a guy that actually learned from Wallace D. Wattles, and this is Napoleon Hill. And I don't know for certain that Napoleon Hill read the works of Wallace D. Wattles, but just listening to some of the things that Wallace D. Wattles wrote and some of the things that Napoleon Hill said, I think the two probably crossed paths, at least on an intellectual basis through reading at one point in time. And there is one saying of Napoleon Hill that I am going to spend a little bit of time discussing in this podcast, but just 3 little words. And it's not, I love you. It's not, pull my finger, although that was a interesting song by Da Vinci's Notebook, but no, 3 little words, and those 3 little words are, thoughts are things. And it's a challenging concept. Some people have taken issue with me on social media when I've posted little memes using those 3 little words, thoughts are things. And it's a difficult thing for people to get their thoughts around. Really, and I had one guy that was kind of trying to debate me on one social media platform, and he said, I just can't accept this. Thoughts are things, thoughts are not things. Thoughts are things that are stuck in your head, right? But then you think about that, and that's a common point of view too. Thoughts are things that are in my head. So if they're in my head, they can't really be real, right? But if you say that thoughts are things in my head, then you are agreeing with the concept that thoughts are things. And it's kind of an interesting little wordplay thing that we can do. But it's actually very serious, because if we agree that thoughts are things, then we also see the wisdom in being rather careful about what thoughts we allow to be born inside our heads, and what thoughts we give energy to, and what thoughts we choose not to give energy to. And in order to illustrate the truth behind this saying that thoughts are things, we can look back. Well, first of all, let's talk a little bit about a book called The Kybalion. And The Kybalion, now this is getting rather metaphysical, but The Kybalion was a little book written about 1913, and it focused on a lot of occult wisdom, a lot of metaphysical wisdom. And one of the issues taken up in the Kybalion, one of the topics, is where does the universe come from? Where does the material world come from? And the writer of the Kybalion stated that all matter is energy. And he was stating this back in 1913, and he was basing this on stuff that was written and, wisdom that predates the author himself. But what the Kabbalion stated is that all material existence is actually energy. So all material things are energy. And then it begins to question, okay, what kind of energy is it? And the writer of the Kabbalion kind of uses a logical progression and then shows that the only bit of energy that really makes sense is thought energy. And the writer of the Kabbalion comes to the conclusion that all things are made of thought energy. And the universe that we see around us, the universe is mental. And not mental in the way of saying, oh, you're crazy. Not mental by, saying like you're cray-cray. But no, mental by way of saying that everything that we see around us is a construct of thought energy. And now, this may sound cray-cray to you. It may sound like we're getting kind of mental. But think about our history, our world history. Back in the 1940s, what did we learn at the Trinity test site in New Mexico in, 1945? We learned with the detonation of the world's first atom bomb that matter was made up of energy, and that if you were able to release that energy, you would have so much power at your fingertips that you could wipe an entire city off the face of the earth in the blink of an eye. And we learned, or at least we should have learned, back in the 1940s that yes, undeniably, it is a truth that all matter is energy. And what the writer of the Kabbalion adds to this discussion, writing, pre-1940s, writing in 1913, the writer of the Kabbalion was stating that, yes, matter is energy. And furthermore, that energy is thought energy. So now, let's relate this to those three little words from Napoleon Hill. Thoughts are things. Now, without taking into consideration the metaphysical nature of matter, that matter is actually energy that's held into a certain vibratory form by a divine mind. Those are the words of, forget what his name was now, but one of the fathers of subatomic physics, matter is actually energy held into a certain vibratory form by a divine mind, and that this gives us the illusion of the material world, the illusion of matter. But if we agree that, okay, all matter is actually energy, and if it is true that that energy is thought energy, then we can see where Napoleon Hill was coming from and why he emphasized that those three little words, thoughts are things. That if this is true, that the universe is mental, that all matter is energy, and that all matter is made up of thought energy, then you come to the conclusion that our thoughts can have an impact on our material world. And we see how easily the material world can actually be impacted by the power of our thoughts. Again, if all matter is thought energy emanating from a divine mind, and we have our own thoughts, we are children of this divine source. Brothers and sisters, children of a common God, part of the Vatican II documents that I used to love reading back when I was in high school. But if All matter is actually thought energy emanating from a divine mind. And we have our own minds. We have our own consciousness. And this consciousness is something that has been shared with us by the divine. Then as children of the divine source, we can co-create with the divine mind through the quality of our thoughts as well as our actions. But when you think about things, what is more primary to action? Before you act, you must think. Sometimes we act without thinking. We just do a knee-jerk reaction. Sometimes we can get ourselves into big trouble that way. But for the most part, all thoughts, all action is preceded by thought. And we think about something, we work the details out, we think about it long enough and hard enough, and then those thoughts inform our actions and we begin to act on those thoughts. So, before we act, we must think about what we do. And our actions, before they manifest themselves in the world around us, they exist in the realm of thought, in our own minds, in our own consciousness. And so when you stop to consider this, we begin to see that not only are thoughts things, but thoughts are the primary things to the physical things that we see around us. So if we're paying attention to the quality of our thoughts, and realizing that what we give energy to in the realm of thought, what thoughts that we focus on the most, we realize that those thoughts are going to be the thoughts that become manifest in our physical, flesh and blood world around us. Then we see the wisdom in focusing on good thoughts rather than bad thoughts. Positive thoughts, positive thinking, rather than negative thinking. And still, a lot of people out there might be saying, yeah, but, thoughts are just things floating around in my head. You're talking metaphysical. You're talking airy-fairy kind of stuff that really doesn't make any sense in the brick-and-mortar, flesh and blood, physical world. But ask yourself the question, over the last 30 years, or 20 years, what kind of thoughts have you been focused on? Have you been focusing on positive thoughts, positive thinking? I can overcome this. I can do whatever I want to. I can make my world anything that I desire. I am the master of all I survey. I can create the life of my own choosing. Positive, empowering thoughts like that. Has that what has been occupying your mind for the last 20 or 30 years? Or have you been focusing on negative thoughts like, I'm screwed. I'm really screwed. I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't. I'm really screwed. Is that the litany that plays out in your mind day after day after day after day? And if so, where has that gotten you? I used to think that way. I used to think, okay, damned if I do, damned if I don't. And of course, that way of thinking led me to the other, the inescapable conclusion that, if I'm damned if I do, and I'm damned if I don't, then why even try? Why even give a damn? And that's the way a lot of people out there think. I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't, so why give a damn? And, it sounds kind of poetic, but it's very negative poetry. But that's a thought process that goes through the minds of a lot of people, day after day after day. And when you have that mindset, then you begin to think, why even try? Why should I try to better myself if everything I do isn't good enough? And, that's a message that we can learn as children, with very tough, demanding parents. You may have grown up with the message that nothing you do is ever good enough, so you may carry that into your adult life. And if that's your mantra, if that's your consistent thought pattern, is that nothing I do is good enough, then why even try? Why try to improve yourself? It makes no logical sense. If you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, nothing you do is ever going to be good enough, why even try? Just sit back on the couch, eat potato chips, and kill yourself with, bad nutrition, no exercise, and throw in a few beers, too, for good measure. But that's where negative thinking gets you. That's where negative thoughts get you. Those are the things that negative thoughts can get you, because those negative thoughts are things that you allow to float around in your consciousness. So, if we recognize that truth, that our actions are informed by our thoughts, thoughts are primary to actions, then it begins to make sense. And especially when you take into consideration that the universe is made up of energy, and we believe that that energy could be thought energy, then again, it makes, 10 times more sense then to really watch the quality of your thoughts and try to think in harmony with the divine mind and not against it. Not in dissonance with the divine mind. Because, we are co-creators, again, getting into metaphysics. And if we choose to think and create in harmony with the divine mind that wants only good for the universe and his or her children, then, we can create beautiful things. But if we want to create in disharmony and work against the divine mind and just do our own thing and not want the good of others, not want the good of the universe, just want our own selfish ends, then, the stuff that we create will be negative stuff. But, if we see the power of focusing on positive thoughts, powerful thoughts, empowering thoughts, then we see the wisdom in focusing on the positive thoughts that we have in our consciousness, in our minds, and the necessity for trying to overcome the negative thoughts that crop up in our minds. Because depending on our history, depending on our backgrounds, depending on how you were raised as a child, you're going to have... Nobody is going to be 100% in their thinking all the time. And a lot of us may be rather negative in our thinking most of the time because of our background, because of our childhood experiences and early life experiences, and then we carry that baggage into adulthood, and we just think that, the universe is against us because that's the way we've been programmed to think from a very early age. So then that begs the question, how do we overcome negative thought patterns? How do we overcome this habit of negative thinking? And it's just a process of trying to overcome one bad habit and replace it with a positive habit. And this comes down to, again, the material that you put into your brain, the stuff that you allow to be planted in your mind. If you have a lot of negative baggage in your mind, don't empower it by thinking about it and ruminating on it constantly. Instead, try to overcome it by doing some positive reading, inspirational reading. Pick up a copy of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, or any of the stuff really put out by Wayne Dyer back in the day is excellent too. But just focus on planting positive thoughts in your brain, and then water those positive thoughts. Focus on that positive energy and allow that positive energy to grow. some very powerful spiritual principles that you find in a lot of different spiritual traditions are based on the idea that what you focus on the most is what is going to grow in your life. Energy flows where attention goes is another way of putting it. But when you focus your energy on the negative thoughts in your mind and the negative things that you see around you in the world, then you give energy to those things. But now if you choose to focus on something positive instead, then you allow your personal creative energy to flow to that positive thought and to those positive things. And what will happen over time if you focus on gradually weeding out the negative thoughts in your mind? And you don't have to physically weed them out like you pull out weeds in a garden, but just don't give them your attention. And when you don't give them attention, eventually they will wither and die. But if you give your attention to the positive thoughts and not to the negative thoughts, allow the positive thoughts to grow and your negative thoughts to decline, then what's going to happen in your life gradually over time? Those positive thoughts are going to grow, and those positive thoughts are then going to inform your actions. Instead of thinking, I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't, so why even try? You'll begin to adopt a new mantra. I can do this. I may not be perfect, but I can become better today than I was yesterday. And I can become better tomorrow than I am today. And when you start thinking in that way, then you will start trying more. You will start to take on new concepts, new challenges, allow new concepts to enter into your mind, and you will begin to undertake new projects that you never would have thought of embarking on in the past because they scared you. You didn't think you were good enough to do these things. But when you begin to cultivate the positive thoughts, then what was previously unthinkable for you to do in a negative mindset becomes thinkable. And those actions are fed by your thoughts. And your thoughts will begin to grow things in your outer world. And that's because those things in our outer world all start as thoughts. Either thoughts emanating from your mind, or thoughts emanating from a divine mind, or thoughts emanating from the people around you, which is why it becomes very important. We can see the importance in surrounding ourselves with what Napoleon Hill calls a mastermind group, and that is gathering around people who are like-minded, who are dedicated to positive, creative thought, and people that are wanting to grow and expand too, because their thought energy will influence our thought energy and begin to rub off on us, so to speak. So if we surround ourselves with a bunch of people that think negatively, they're going to give power to our negative thinking patterns and our negative mental side. And it's just going to be reinforcing negative habits and blocking our way to progress. But if we surround ourselves with positive people, positive energy, then we give power to the positive thoughts in our minds, and we allow ourselves the ability to begin to create positive things in the brick and mortar, flesh and blood, physical world all around us. I'm going to conclude this discussion with a little bit of science. Now, I found this video on YouTube about 10 years ago, and I was looking for it again, could not find it, but it referenced I believe it was a Stanford study on meditation and the effect that meditation has on the material world. And what this study was, and I wish I could document it now, but I'm going to start looking it up again on the internet, see if I can track it down. But what this study was is that what they did, they had a group of meditators, and these were professional meditators, people that had spent, 10,000 hours in the practice of meditation. So these were like expert meditators. And they wanted to test and see, okay, through the power of meditation, through the power of focused thought alone, is it possible to make changes in the physical environment? And what they did to try to prove this, to try to test this, is that they had 2 vials of a liquid. And this liquid was set at a certain pH value. And both of these vials were identical. They had the identical pH value. And these vials were placed in a tamper-proof container. And one vial was given to the meditators to meditate on. And the other vial was kept as a control in a separate area where the meditators didn't know anything about that vial. But what the meditators were told, they were told that, okay, this vial contains a liquid that has been calibrated to a certain pH value. And what we want you to do is just meditate on raising that pH value by 1 point. And so they did. The group of meditators focused on raising the pH value of that vial of liquid by 1 point. And after a time, I don't know exactly how long they meditated for, but after a certain period of time, they then took the 2 vials, they took them back into the laboratory, opened them up out of their tamper-proof containers, and ran a test. And they found that the pH value of the liquid in the vial that the meditators had been focusing on was raised by 1 point. The second vial of liquid that the meditators knew nothing about, that pH value was still the same. So, yeah, they concluded, at least, for the time being, the time that study was done, they concluded that, yes, thoughts can impact the physical reality around us. And that meditation, focused thought. What is meditation? Well, listening to God, communing with the universe around us. Sometimes when you're focusing on a mantra, can be very easily seen as focused thought. But yeah, focused thought, meditation, they can have and do have a physical impact on the world around us. And again, Napoleon Hill was saying this stuff long before that study was ever attempted. And he came to the conclusion, thoughts are things. So try to adopt that way of thinking in your life if you're wanting to make positive change in your life, in whatever aspect of life you're focused on. Of course, this podcast, we're focused on home-based business, but if you want to carry this over into personal relationships, love and romance, building a better world, whatever, building a better body. Focus on the quality of your thoughts. Recognize that thoughts are not just little airy-fairy little substances floating around in your head. Thoughts are things. And thoughts are things that float around in your head, but they are also the things that make up our physical world. And they are the things that are going to be having an impact in one way or another on your physical world. So if you focus on the good thoughts, focus on positive thoughts, you can accomplish great positive things. But if you focus on the negative thoughts, then you're going to be manifesting negative reality all around you, spreading negativity to other people. And you will just get stuck in that mind trap of damned if I do, damned if I don't. So why should I even give a damn? Don't damn yourself that way. Grow your positive thoughts, grow your positive energy, and take the time you need to just grow a positive mindset. And then you'll begin to see that you can grow in many, many other ways. So now this is Ralph signing out. We are going to take the weekend off. I've got a lot of weekend projects that need to get done. So we'll be gone Saturday and Sunday, but we will return Monday. And if you got any topics that you would like me to cover, look me up online, ralphlindy.com, and contact me through that website. And just shoot me your questions, your comments, your concerns, and anything you would like me to focus on in upcoming podcasts. If I am qualified to speak on it, I will. And if I'm not, I won't. So that's all for today. Thanks for dropping by. Take care, and think positive thoughts.